This is Main Street with Gary Allen. Now, here's Gary.
Hi, everybody. Gary Allen here with you on Main Street. We've got an interesting show for you today. We have a great guest, but I hope everybody's been well the last couple of weeks since we saw you last. And I hope everybody is staying out of the heat. It is hot in some places and it's a little cooler in others. And some fires going on here and there, but I hope you're taking care of each other. And I hope all is well with you. My guest this afternoon is a very interesting young man. To say that the stars aligned in his favor in his life is to put it mildly, as you will find out as this program unfolds. His name is Michael Stern. He's an author. He was also a producer on the Dr. Phil show, and his book is called I Had a Ball, My Friendship with Lucille Ball. Not only was he friends with Lucille Ball, and as I said, he was an audience producer for the Dr. Phil show, but he was also friends with Betty White, a longtime love of mine, although she never knew it. He was also friends with Florence Henderson, Carol Burnett. And if you go on his website, mylucy.com, you will see him pictured with 1,000 different people on that program on his website. So, you know, the Lucy show. No, thelucyfan.com. thelucyfan.com. I always get this. Sometimes I get things wrong when I'm not reading right. Would you please welcome to the program, Mr. Michael Stern? Thank you for joining us, Michael.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm glad we finally got to sit down and talk.
Well, I'm sorry I got the it's thelucyfan.com. Go there, get this book. You will love it very much. It's a story about one of the most beloved men, excuse me. I'm all over the place today. Women in television. She really was. She was a dynamo. And when I say to you, Michael, and you heard the introduction, that the stars aligned for you, I'm not kidding. In 1971, at the age of 10 years old, you were in the audience of Here's Lucy, if I have it correct. And I don't know if your eyes met hers or hers met yours, but whatever. For the next number of years, you and her became really good friends, so much so that in 1974, she designated you as her number one fan. How did this relationship even get started?
Well, even before 10 years old, being about 8, 9 years old, a movie came out called Yours, Mine, and Ours with Lucille Ball and Henry Fonda. It was almost like the Brady Bunch. She had 8 kids. He had 10 kids. They met, they fell in love, and they got married. And so I was a fan of hers from that movie. And about 6 months later, I was watching a show called I Love Lucy. And it was my aunt who said, you know, Michael, that's the same lady who was in Yours, Mine, and Ours. I had no idea. And from that minute on, I was hooked with Lucille Ball. And when I was 10...
Move a little forward, Michael, move a little forward towards your microphone so we can hear you better.
Okay. And
That's
when
good.
I was all right. And when I was about 10 years old, I actually got to go to a filming of Here's Lucy because it was my neighbor's mother's boss that worked on the Lucy show. And so I got tickets and I can still remember it. They put me because you had to be 12 to get in and I was only 10. They hid me in a corner, but I can still remember her husband, Gary Morton at the time, introducing Lucille Ball to the studio audience. And she comes out in the center, running from one end of the studio to the next, just waving. And I'll never forget that moment. And I was 10 years old. When I went back a couple extra times, then she called me her number one fan. I went backstage. Her mother introduced me because her mother used to go to every single filming of Here's Lucy. And so I brought my scrapbook and she said, how would you like to meet Lucy after the show? And so I got to meet her. And she was so nice to me, like we would never see each other again. But then she saw me over and over. And that's when she dubbed me her number one fan. As long as I stayed in school and I got a job. And I did.
Yeah. That's another thing we're going to, What, over the years that you got to know her, What was she like? I mean, most of us don't get an opportunity to meet Lucille Ball. I mean, I met many celebrities while I lived in LA, but not many of us get to meet Lucille Ball or Betty White or Florence Henderson or, well, I got to meet Carol Burnett. We talked about it before we went on the air, but most of the time you can live in Hollywood for 100 years and not even meet one celebrity. How was it to get to know Lucille Ball and her family? I'm sure because I believe you got to meet Desi and Lucy, her daughter, and
They're
Gary
now
Morton, her husband
family.
at the
They're now
time.
family. They're
Yeah,
now family.
yeah,
I
yeah,
I could go to Lucy's house, Lucy Arnaz, and I could stay at her house. We are family. She's like an older sister to me,
yeah,
and is the next generation. And also, her grandkid, Lucille Ball's grandkids, and um, it's just I am part of the family now. But early on, I always knew the difference. I always knew the difference between Lucille Ball, the actress, and Lucille Ball, the person. And that was at 10
hmm,
years old. And no one told me there was a difference. I knew even at 10 the difference between the two ladies. And I always treated Lucille Ball, the person, as the person. And when I got to
yeah.
know her, I never talked about what was it like being on I Love Lucy 35 years ago, or what was Fred and Ethel like, or, just we always
You
talked
didn't
about
talk
what was in the news.
shop.
No,
You
we
didn't talk
talked
shop.
about no, we talked family stuff and what was in the news of the day. And so I treated her as a real person, and I think she liked that.
Well, at the time that you met her, of course, she was married to Gary Morton. And I guess she and Gary eventually ran Desilu Productions. But in the early part of her career, she was married to a man who was responsible for a lot of her success on television. And that was her husband, her late husband, Desi Arnaz. He was still alive, I think, by the time you met her. I don't think he
Yes,
died until about
absolutely.
15, 20 years ago. And
Right.
by the way,
Well, it's
I
been
even know
longer than
Desi.
that. It's been
He's been
longer than
gone
that,
longer
but
than
yes.
that? Oh my
Yeah,
goodness. Well,
mid-80s.
everybody
I
used to
know.
call him the stupid band leader. Far from the stupid band leader. He put together Desilu Productions, and they produced half a dozen television shows that I can think of. When you come at the end, you'd see the Desilu signature thing on there, the trademark, the logo. And he was a very smart man, a very brilliant man. As a matter of fact, Lucy credits him with the success that she had in so many ways in her life.
Absolutely. And, it was a give and take. They made it what it was because of the 2 of them together. But
Yeah,
if what I was told, because I wasn't around during that time of I Love Lucy, I wasn't born yet. But a lot of things he sort of invented or like, "Well, why not? Why can't we do this?" And it's like, "Yeah, it can be done. Let's do it." So he didn't like no for an answer. And same thing, which we'll talk about later. Dr. Phil doesn't want no for an answer. Lucille Ball had her name all over that stage, or Desi Lou.
mhm,
Same thing with, you know, Dr. Phil. His name is all over that stage. They know what they want from that show. And the word no is impossible. It's like they know what they want and they got it.
yeah.
Why not?
I
Why
know
can't we do it?
I know that when, she divorced Desi, she took over Desilu Productions,
Not in the
and
beginning, but
n
yes, yes.
well, at some point she did because she told the story on I don't remember if it was on, Oprah's show or one show where Oprah said, "When you took command of the productions," she said, "Yes." She said, "We were starting a new Lucy show, and we went into her table read, and we sat down and read it and realized the script was terrible. It was awful, blah, blah, blah. We took a break. We came back, and she said, that's when my last name became plural instead of singular. She said, I laid the law down, and she said, that's when I realized what Desi had to go through to get things done day to day from everything from the lighting, the makeup, the this, that, and the other. She said, that's when I really, really realized exactly what he had to go through. She said, because I would just show up, do my stuff, and go home, and that would be it. Begs the question. Um, a lot of people have misconceptions about Lucy, and one of them I know for a fact, and you obviously do. She wasn't this "ha ha" funny, I'm always telling a joke or I'm doing stuff when the cameras aren't running. She was feet were planted on the ground. She was a serious woman, a mother, a wife, and by no means was she this happy-go-lucky, well, she was happy-go-lucky, but she wasn't this over-the-top comedian that you saw in front of the cameras.
No, and she started off as being a dramatic actress. So comedy was not what she started off to do.
No.
And she was not a funny lady. She could do funny things if the script called for it, and she would rehearse it 20 and 30 times to make it look like she had never done it before.
Yeah,
And that's what, like,
yeah,
Vivian Vance and Lucy, they would rehearse it to the ground almost, maybe too much, but no, they knew what they were doing. And then there were some other comedians, um, and an old friend, John Ritter, said that he once did a Lucy show, and then a couple weeks earlier or later, he did the Bill Cosby show. And here, Bill Cosby was number one in his, for comedy, and Lucille Ball was number one for comedy, but they both did it a different way. Lucille Ball would rehearse 30 times, and Bill Cosby would do it once and said, "That's it. Let's wait
yeah,
for the audience."
yeah,
So,
yeah,
I mean, they
yeah.
all have different ways of getting what they wanted.
Well, one was a comedian, stand up and told he was a storyteller, forever and a day, and Lucy wasn't, and I remember
Nope.
those early movies with Lucy. She was absolutely drop dead gorgeous. I mean, I'm telling you, and you were right there next to her. She was a beautiful, beautiful lady, but she was a very serious, mom, and I know, Desi, who I ran into a lot in Las Vegas, because he lives just outside of Las Vegas.
Desi
And
Jr.
I yeah, Desi Jr. And I would see him, and once in a while, if Dean Martin's younger son, Richie, who was a good friend of mine, God rest his soul, was in town, maybe we'd have lunch, we'd go to a buffet or something, and one of the nicest guys in the whole world, you know? And when we were at that table, we didn't talk show business, we didn't talk shop. And every once in a while, Mel Torme's son, Stephen Marsh, would join us. But we never talked shop. That's the one thing people have a misconception about, not only probably show business people, but you don't talk shop. I mean, you all have the same thing in common. What are you going to talk about? The conversation will be
Right.
over with in
If he
two
was a
minutes.
plumber, you wouldn't be talking about his pipes all day long either.
No,
It's
no.
yeah.
But what are some of the other misconceptions about Lucy that people might possibly have?
That she was family. She, really loved her family. Uh, she was kind. She donated a lot of money and her name to a lot of events. Um, that she was very kind. I mean, she was almost like the next door neighbor that you thought she was going to be. You know, she was great. You know what? She was great to her fans because I've seen a lot of celebrities who are not so nice to their fans. And it's like,
No.
you live in that big house because us fans. Yes, you do your job and everything, but you need to be a little nice to your fans once in a while. And she was always
Yeah.
great. She signed autographs. I don't know how she would have been in the 21st century, with taking photos all the time, but she definitely signed autographs.
Yeah. I know that uh, show business has a tendency sometimes to pull families apart, but Lucy didn't let that happen. I mean, what
No.
happened between her and Desi was one thing, but it didn't stop her from being a mom, a wife to Gary, a friend, a this or that or the other. And because you've seen it firsthand living in LA, so have I, where one half of the family is making money hand over fist and the other one isn't. Maybe she's an actress, maybe he's an actor, and it can pull people apart. It's a very alluring and aphrodisiac to pull families apart. Show business is like that, and it probably always will be.
When they divorced, they only had one lawyer between the two of them
Hmm.
because they didn't fight. I mean, they were closer, what I've been told, because I was not there, but they were closer after they divorced because they didn't have to fight anymore.
Yeah.
So, and they both had two new spouses and they came from two happy families, just Lucy and Desi Jr. lived in 2 happy homes.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw him once on a Tonight Show, and, Johnny Carson brought Lucy up, and you could almost see the tear in his eye about Lucy, and, um but, sometimes when people are together for a very long period of time, whether they're husband and wife or they're a comedy team, sometimes it wears itself thin and it wears itself out, and there's differences that occur, and who are we to judge one way or the other? But things do happen. But a question that I will ask you later, but I guess I can ask you now. I don't think until the day she passed away that Desi was very far from her heart or her thoughts.
They were both they still loved each other. They
Yeah.
just couldn't live together.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that one. I was
Yeah.
married once too. I mean, it does happen. Why the book?
You know what? No one has asked that question. Very good question. I used to go to the Lucy Desi Comedy Center every year for Lucy's birthday, which they still have every August in Jamestown, New York. And people kept saying, you should write a book. You should write a book about being a fan of Lucille Ball. And there's no dirt. It's just a really nice book because I always felt if something happened in her house, it remained private unless if it was something like we watched I Love Lucy together or something to that nature, something fun.
Uh-huh.
Um, and it took me about 4 or 5 years to come up with the stories that I wrote because it's my stories that happened with Lucy. It wasn't like, well, the manicurist next door neighbor's gardener said Lucy did this. These are my stories, my thoughts. I can't go into Lucy's brain of what she was thinking unless she told me. And then finally, the last year, the 4 or 5 years, I really sat down, put in the photos, and it's just a really nice tribute to my friend Lucy, and it's what other fans thought she was, because there's so
Yeah.
many other books out there that never met Lucy, and like I said, it was like the gardener's opinion. It's like, you can't really the gardener really didn't have much to say,
Yeah.
and,
I know
it
that
wasn't
there
even
were I know there were some I know there are some nice, testimonials to the book from Lucy's children, Desi and Lucy,
right, and it's the only book
Arnaz.
that they've actually done that to.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
there are others out there, and you and I know someone who's written a book, I think, about Lucille Ball, but I never got a chance to read that one. Um, we are talking to Michael Stern. He is a wonderful young man. He's an author, and you can learn more about him and about the book on the lucyfan.com. Oh, I got it right. I actually
Yeah,
got it
thank you,
right, Michael. I got it
I
right.
love
I
it.
got it right.
I look
Go
you know,
in there, you can see.
I just got a haircut. I look like, Gilbert Gottfried, or what he used to look like.
Oh, speaking of an old friend, God bless his soul.
Yeah.
Do you know speaking I gotta he did something at the Improv one night in New York. I don't know if you've ever heard this story, but because I used to perform at the Improv in LA on Melrose. And one night he comes in and we're sitting around, Will Schreiner and I think Glenn Hirsch, we're talking about the night that he went on stage at the Improv, came down from his hotel room upstairs, actually his apartment, came down in his bathrobe and his pajamas, got on stage and did the entire act looking at the wall at the Improv or Catch a Rising Star, looked at the wall, never turned his back to look at the audience, and did his entire comedy act. And it was funnier than if he had turned around and did his comedy act.
That's
That's the
hysterical.
incredible. He was, God bless him, and Aflac. I'll do that on behalf of him. Please go and buy this book. I had a ball. My friendship with Lucille Ball. Uh, Lucy was there's a wait, bring it up again. Put it up there. Go ahead, put it up there, Michael. Put it up there.
I'm
There it
shy.
is. No, you're
I'm
not.
pretty
Please don't tell people that. You're not shy. That is a beautiful book. I had a ball. That really is. She was, somebody asked me once, was that her real name? And I said, yeah, I think. I don't think anybody, well, I mean, yeah, people change names all the time. Um,
She changed her
I
name
know
once
she,
for Diane Belmont for about 2 minutes.
Diane Bilmont.
Diane Bilmont. I think that was her
Oh
name,
god.
and, it
No, I'm
didn't last too
sorry.
long. Yep,
No,
and
no.
she went
It's
back
like
to,
when Lucille Ball. It's like me when I was born. I was adopted, and my name at birth was Philip Pappas. I am so glad my mother changed my name to Gary because I don't like the name Philip. I'm sorry. I've never for me it never fit. Gary always seemed to fit. So I'm there 100%. Um when you were a certain age, she gave you some great advice about stay in school, get a job, and then she did something that I think is probably the rarest thing that has ever been to any employee in any department store ever. You take it from there and you know what I'm talking about.
actually, she said, "Just don't ever quit." I mean, just don't be a quitter. Is that where you're going at?
Well, that and she showed up one day, didn't she?
Oh, she sure did. She sure did. Job, my first real job working at a department store in the San
Mhm.
Fernando Valley, and, not far from Universal Studios, but definitely not where a celebrity would go shopping. And, I called her office, and I talked to Wanda, who was Lucy's secretary forever,
Yeah.
and she told Lucy that I was working, and then within, like, 5 minutes, Lucy said, "What's your schedule?" Called me back and like, "What's your schedule?" And I told her, and she came to the May company to make sure that I was working, and she bought about $450 worth of, linens from me, and she had a little shopping list, which is actually there's photos of it in the book. The day she came to visit, yeah, so, because her credit card didn't go through, and she had good credit, just she had not used the May company credit card in probably 30 years, so it just had to be updated. But, that's a funny story as well in the book because I had to call downtown to get it authorized, and I said, "It's Lucille Ball," and they go, "Get her ID." I go, "It's Lucille Ball." They say, "Get her ID." So I finally got her ID. Lucy said, "You don't know who I am," type thing. So I read the number to the lady, downtown. I said, "Okay, her driver's license number is whatever." And she goes, "Oh my God, that's Lucille Ball." I go, "That's what I've been
That's what
trying
I've
to
been
tell
trying to
you."
tell you. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
her credit went through.
Yeah. I would imagine she probably helps support, you know, in so many ways her friends and family in a lot of endeavors that they were involved in, whether it was just showing up and saying hello or buying some linen from you or whatever the case may be. But
I worked at a charity event, and at the time that I said I could get Lucy to sign 8 by 10 autographs for like $25. And the charity said, "No one's gonna do that. No one's gonna spend $25." I think we got over $1,000 of $25 purchases that Lucy signed one day, to Bill, to Frank, to Gary, to, Sally.
yeah,
And it was the biggest donation that charity had ever received. And,
yeah.
yeah, no, Lucy was, very kind to me doing that.
You know, Michael, as you're saying that, I as you know, I lived in Hollywood for over 10 years and did a lot of television and stuff like that. Not a lot, but I did some. And I have always found the kindest, gentlest people and charitable people are show business people. The ladies that we're going to talk about coming up after Lucy are the same way. Um, kind, generous. My very dear friend Ray Abruzzo, he loves horses, and he and his friends they take care of horses that have been abandoned, and everything else. I think that's a common misconception because of the current generation that all show business people are selfish and self centered. They're not. The older generation grew up hard and rough, and they know what it's like to be without. So they're kind and generous to people. And, the old saying that I once asked Jackie Gleason, because my mother decorated his home once, well, actually twice. I said to him, "Did you coin the phrase that you got to be nice on the way up because you're going to meet him on the way down?" He said, "I didn't coin it, but I've used it." And he said, "It's true." And it is true. You never know who your friends are until you're really down and out and you need help.
I totally agree.
you know? I
Absolutely.
mean, you know, now, we're gonna kinda switch gears 'cause I wanna make sure people, though, understand it's, some of the wonderful stuff that you have done, but, don't forget to get this book, folks. It's called The Lucy Go to thelucyfan.com and go get I Had a Ball. You will love the book, the pictures in it and everything else like that. Is there any way they can get you to autograph it?
Sure, absolutely. Once it gets to delivered to their house, I could actually make a stop at their home, no matter where in the country, and sign it for them.
Okay.
Or I guess I could sign it before I mail it to them. So yes, I
Yeah.
will be honored to. It is so funny.
Okay.
Here I am, the autograph collector, but I'm signing my own book for fans,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
interesting. But no, it's a very nice book. I'll be honored.
Well, I'm grateful that you wrote the book, and I'm sure a lot of people are too, because Lucille Ball was an icon, will always be an icon, and as long as there's any kind of way of watching her show or any of the shows on there, um, on about her or her earlier movies, she'll always be someone that you hear actresses say all the time, and even comedians, "I loved Lucy. I loved to watch that show." You know, I know she wasn't like that off the air, but man, I really loved the way she performed. And she was a perfectionist, as you said. She would rehearse and rehearse and rehearse and rehearse. And you know, a lot of people did rehearse a lot. They feel more comfortable after rehearsing. I forget what director it is. He does so many takes that by the end of the day, they're really tired and exhausted. So, you know,
Yes.
it happens that way. And as I said, you know, we have Michael Stern with us here on Main Street. He is the author of uh, I Had a Ball, My Friendship with Lucille Ball, which you can get at thelucyfan.com. Please do. But he has been friends with more than just Lucille Ball. As a matter of fact, you have probably been friends with the number one animal activist, I guess, in Hollywood, although Loretta Swit swears that she was pretty good too. God rest her soul. She was a friend with Miss Betty White. How did you get to meet that lovely young lady?
Well, the very first time I met her was at a fundraiser, probably for animals. It was at a local radio station, and they had like a little auction that day and everything. And she was signing autographs, and I volunteered, and I got to sit next to her for like 2 hours while she was signing autographs.
Hmm.
And afterwards, and I must have been like 14, 15 years old. I remember I had to go. I went there by taking a couple buses to, this radio station, and afterwards, I said, "I would love to get tickets, I think to the Mary Tyler Moore Show and Match Game." She gave me her home phone number. She gave me her home phone number. She had been in the business for 50 years probably at that point, and here she gives a 14-year-old kid her home phone number, and I called her up. I said I would love to go, and she arranged it for the Mary Tyler Moore Show, for Match Game, and, I would talk to her, not daily or anything, but she knew that I liked Lucy and all that, so whenever, Lucille Ball did, like, password or game shows, Betty White was always, like, partnered with her,
Hmm.
and, so I would see her I saw her a lot, or Actors
Hmm.
and Others for Animals. My favorite One of my favorite all-time Betty White stories, uh years later, I got to be like an escort at award shows, and I used to do it for, Lucille Ball, not for Lucy, but for Betty White and Carol Burnett. So whenever they were gonna be at an award show, it's like, "Okay, get Michael Stern. He will escort her down the red carpet. He knows what to do. He won't fan out because it's them." And I was working a charity event that Betty White was doing, and she was probably already 90 years old, and she wanted to meet, Bill Clinton. She had never met Bill Clinton. And the charity arranged for Betty to meet
Yeah.
Bill Clinton after Bill Clinton went on and did his speech. Now, Betty White went on like at 8 o'clock, and he wasn't going to go on till like 9:30. So we have
Hmm.
Betty White sitting in the green room. And then when Bill Clinton came in, they had to sweep the green room, so they put Betty White in the hallway with everybody else. She's 90 years old.
What?
So after about 5 minutes, I said to the security, I said, "Look, I'm here with Betty White. Is it possible she could meet, the president?" He was then ex-president, but the president
Yeah.
after, I mean, like, now. And so
Mhm.
you see security going to their sleeves, like Betty White to see Bill Clinton, Betty White. And the answer
Yes.
was
Yeah.
yes. The answer was yes. So Betty White, I said to Betty, "Bill Clinton would like to see you now." And she said, "Michael, would you like to meet Bill Clinton as well?" I go, "Yes, 100%." She goes, "You got to name your next kid after me." And so I had that promise for her. And so I have pictures with me with Bill Clinton and Betty
Yeah.
White photobombing the photo. So,
Well, that's
and
fantastic.
that stayed in her house until about 2 years ago when all her items went up for auction, and that one photo sold for a few $100.
You and I have something in common.
Another thing, what?
Well, yeah. Um, when I was working in Chicago in the Attorney General's office, our boss lost his bid to be governor. So a couple of days after my mother calls me, it's now the beginning, like the getting ready for Thanksgiving. And she calls me up and she says, "So what are you going to do now?" And I said, "Well, Grace and I are divorcing, and I I don't know what I'm going to do, Mom. I'm thinking about maybe coming home, but at the same time, there's a guy down in Arkansas, and I forget his name. He's going to be running for president, and I think some of myself and some of the Chicago mafia were thinking about going to work for him." And she said, "Well," and that's when I went home and took care of my parents until they passed away. That didn't happen. But I got to meet him years later because my buddy was his chief advance. And I have a pen, a presidential pen for your lapel that he gave me. And I also met Hillary. And I've done my impression of him in front of both of them. And he thinks it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, which means I think he needs to get his ears checked. But, you know, but let me just say this to you. It was probably a pleasure to meet Betty. I mean, I wasn't Robert Redford, and I know how she felt about him, but, nevertheless, there it is. But,
You should do
I
your imitation now. Let's see if let me hear it. No, I'm
I
joking.
just
That was
did it.
very good. That was very good.
I'll do it again. Thank you very much. But I know she had a thing for Robert Redford, and, the funny thing about her animal activism is it knew it knew no bounds. She would go up to this particular park, I think at some point or another, and there was a bear up there that apparently she knew since that bear was a little cub, and she would go and pet that bear every year when she would go up there. Um, she was just kind and gentle and everything, except when she went on the Friars roast, and boy, she tore Bill Shatner and John Stamos apart. I mean, she tore Shatner apart thanks to Kai, but I mean, she was a sharp, she was smart, she was witted. The only thing I think she ever said, the last interview I saw her with was, "I should have married Alan sooner."
Yep,
I
I have a
think that
great
was,
photo of the two of them together, with the three of us together.
yeah.
Absolutely. And I just
Um,
looked up the other day. He was only like 62 or 63 when he passed away.
Yeah, I believe it was cancer. I believe he was a smoker, I
Yes.
believe, if I'm not
Yeah.
too incorrect. But she was the life of the party. They did not a documentary, but they did something on her, and I watched it. And she was constantly busy. If there was a day open in the middle of the week, I got to do something to fill that day. I got to be busy. I got to work. I got to do this. I got to do that. But she was literally the queen of television. I mean, she did live television, not recorded, not with a teleprompter per se, although there might have been one there, but she did 3 hours a day, her own show, the Betty White show.
Before I Love Lucy.
Yeah, yeah. And she broke the color barrier. The young man, and I forget his name, who was on the Lawrence Welk show, a man of color who was a dancer. I forget his name. She had him
And
on
I
a
and
show,
I
and
met
boy,
him. I met him a few years ago now. And again, I can't remember his name either.
but she broke the color barrier. It meant not to the real people of the world, color means nothing. It's just this outer shell that we live in. That's all, you know? Like Frank Sinatra was very much like that. And so was Dean. And that's how the color barrier got broken in Las Vegas. But escorting Betty to events had to be a trip and a half because everybody wants to meet Betty White.
That's right. That's right. And she was one of the 2, 3 of the nicest ladies I've ever met in Hollywood. That
Yeah.
just when you met her, you go, "Yeah, that's Betty White." She was exactly what you saw on TV. She was exactly the same lady.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's no question
Yeah.
about it. Yeah. I hung
This sh-
around with
that
some really nice ladies.
Yeah, and we're gonna get to a couple here in a little bit too. Um, any great advice that she ever gave you, like Lucy?
Whew. Just be kind to animals, two-legged and four-legged. Yeah,
It's easier to be kinder to the four-legged than it is to two, isn't it?
it certainly was. Yeah, but no, she was, very kind. So,
Yeah.
that's all I have to say about her.
Yeah,
Just like
and I think the world was very sad, even though she was up there in years.
she made
I
it
think the
almost to
world,
100, and depending on if you did the math and leap year days and this and that, she was 100 years old when she passed away. She was,
yeah.
like, within a month of being 100, and,
I don't think there's anybody that I've ever talked to that her name hasn't come up, that they just fell in love with her. She was like everybody's grandma, everybody's friend. Everybody thought they knew each other. Now, here's a question that I need to ask because a friend of mine asked me to ask you. You may not know the
okay.
answer to this. You may not know the answer to this. I don't know. But there are rumors that there were riffs on the Golden Girls between her and another actress. Are they true or not?
B. Arthur?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the answer
You got a
is,
smile on your face, so there must be something to it.
you know what? They came from 2 different worlds of acting, is what I've been told. I did go
Hmm.
to a couple, uh, Golden Girl type shows. I mean, I went to a couple of them, and I remember B. Arthur, whenever she was not on, her back was towards the audience, in a corner, studying her part. Betty White would actually come to the stage, I mean, to the audience and talk and make laughs and just it was a different type of Betty White knew how to treat the audience.
She she knew how to work a room.
Yeah, and B. Arthur did not. Um, B. Arthur came from the stage of Broadway, like she did her act and then she was off,
Yeah.
and she
Yeah.
couldn't really talk to the audience. But when you met B. Arthur, she was a delightful lady as well, not as scary as I thought she would be. You know,
Yeah.
I thought she was like
y-
this, like
Yeah.
Maud or, Dorothy, but no, she
No.
was a very kind lady, and they met,
It just didn't click.
they didn't click. But boy, I mean, same thing with William Frawley and Vivian Vance.
Yeah.
They they
Well,
didn't play outside of their arena together, but when they worked together, according to Lucille Ball, it was like if William Frawley had an issue with the script or whatever, or Vivian Vance, they would go to each other first to work it out. So they would work together. They weren't
mhm.
arguing and yelling at each other as you would think. They just didn't go out to dinner afterwards. They were
No,
20 years apart. And,
yeah.
even your coworkers, when's the last time you went out with your coworker for dinner? You don't,
Well, my
just
coworker here is my cat, Princess, and I have dinner with her every night. While she eats, I
okay,
have
then
my
that's
dinner.
different. Okay.
But
Okay.
no, I know what you mean. When I was working in radio, when I started out in Miami at WIOD with Larry King, when I was one of, I interned for him when I was at the University of Miami. Yeah, I mean, hey, look at it this way too, Michael. You live in an apartment complex. I lived in LA. I lived right off of North Kings Road, right? You live in an apartment complex. You sometimes live there for 2, 3 years before you even know who lives across the hall from you.
I can tell you that today. Yes, absolutely. 100%.
And by the way,
I agree.
Michael Stern is our guest here on Main Street. He's a new friend to me, and he's going to be a friend for me for life. He's promised me to name his firstborn after me. I don't
Second,
know what he's going to.
Betty's
Oh,
book.
the second book. Oh, that's right. You already made another promise. So that's right. Please go and get his Lucy book. I had a ball. My friendship with Lucille Ball, and you can go ahead thelucyfan.com. Please go and get that book. It is a wonderful book. It's a wonderful read. Um, you, as I said at the top of the show, the stars lined up for you in so many ways. I mean, I know people that have lived in LA for 25 years trying to not buck the system, but trying to get in as an actor or try to meet this one or that one, and they never meet anybody. Now, I was very lucky. I got to meet a lot of different people because I got to do some shows here or there. The only kind of show that I always wanted to do, and my friend Ken Schreiner, Will Schreiner's brother, who was on General Hospital, I always wanted to do just one line on a soap opera. And Ken said, "No, you don't." He said, "You really don't." He said, it's so fast paced, the filming from early in the morning till afternoon. It's fast paced. And if you don't get it and you can't memorize your lines, you're no good in the soap opera stuff. But that's the only genre that I never really did anything. And I made some movies. I did some TV. Radio is my thing. It always has been. As my mother used to say, I had a perfect face for radio. I mean, that
Yeah.
was just no doubt about it. I look like Jay Leno, but nevertheless, and Jay and I have known each other since we were 9 years old. So, I mean, it's like, whatever can happen. Did Betty, uh, ever did she ever lose her temper in front of you or to anybody? I mean, can't imagine she had one, but she had to have something.
I will say I never saw that side of her.
Yeah.
I saw her a couple times that, once the elevator doors closed or something, that smile went down a little bit because she was always smiling. But, people are people, just I only
Yeah.
saw the good
Yeah.
side.
I mean, we all listen,
Sometimes at award
we're
shows,
human beings.
yeah, and they want it right. They know what they want, and they get it, and they get it.
Yeah. I want to talk now about a young lady who I also happen to meet. So far, the first three, I have never met Lucille Ball, of course, but um, Carol Burnett and Florence Henderson. How did you get to meet? I guess through Betty or others, you got to meet both of these ladies, as well as you have thousands of other people in the business. But how did you get so close to Clarence? Yeah, I'm combining them both together.
Yes.
Florence and Carol.
Well, two different stories, but Florence Henderson, I would see at Hollywood events. Like, oh, could I have your autograph? Could I have your autograph?
Hmm.
But in the 1990s, I was working at charity every year called the Victor Awards, and it took place in Las Vegas at the Las Vegas Hilton Hotel.
Yep.
The sponsor
Yep.
was the Barry Hilton, and it was almost like the ESPYs, but it was on like Fox Sports Network and everything. And
Hmm.
it was also for a charity for City of Hope. And Florence Henderson was very involved with the City of Hope. And one year I was in the hotel lobby, didn't know Florence that well. And I said, oh, I'm going to go to another hotel to have dinner with my folks. They're in town. And so I leave about an hour and a half later. I come back and she's in the lobby again. Florence Henderson. She said, how was dinner? I go, I got stood up from my parents. And it was before the cell phone. My
Uh,
dad, my dad hated the buffet. Just did not like buffets at all. I went to every single restaurant at that other hotel. Couldn't find them at all. Paged them. Couldn't find them. I got stood up from my parents. Where were they? They were at the buffet. I had no idea. That's the only place I didn't check. So Florence said, all right, then you're having dinner with me. And at her table that night was the people who owned Coca-Cola and the Ferraris. And she goes, you think I'm rich? You should see their money. It was like, and
yeah.
we just sat and we talked about Lucy and from that night on, we became super close friends. I mean, we would talk on the phone maybe every week, whatever she was filming. I was always her guest. She was on Dancing with the Stars later on, and she was allowed to have 6 guests every week, and I was one of her 6 guests. Um, So I was always rooting her on. But her daughter works for the TV Academy. And so there were a lot of events that I would go to with the TV Academy and always go with her. And so we would socialize that way. But just she was so close to being Carol Brady, except for she had a foul mouth. She was like, she could talk a man's point of view. And here it is coming out of Carol Brady's mouth. But she, like Betty White and Carol Burnett, we'll talk about it, and Lucy, whenever people met these four ladies, they
Hmm.
were just like you thought they would be in real life and in person and their TV character. But Florence Henderson was Carol Brady in my mind. She really
Hmm.
was. She was sweet and nice, just
Right.
I loved her. It just I miss her. I miss and Betty and everyone, but I miss Florence
Yeah.
Henderson. And just so you know, Florence Henderson wrote the foreword in my book. I had a ball 21 days before she passed away. 21 days
Oh,
because she was
and that
fine.
was a shock too. And that
Oh,
was a shock that she passed away.
I was going to, I don't know why I didn't go to Dancing with the Stars that week, but she went like on a Monday and she passed away like on that Thursday on Thanksgiving Eve, I
Yeah.
think it was. But so sad. She was born on like Valentine's Day and died on Thanksgiving. Just
Well, I mean, if
yeah.
you're gonna go out, you're gonna go out. I mean, but it was a shock. I remember that. I remember people saying, "Did we know she was sick? Was she sick? Was there something wrong?"
No.
And I said, "No, as far as I know." I mean, I didn't know her, but and they even said in the news that there was nothing wrong. I know that I got to meet the gentleman who played her husband on the Brady Bunch, and
Oh, okay.
he would come to the Improv every once in a while and
Robert
see the
Reed?
comedians where I would. Huh? Yeah. He would come to the Improv every once in a while, and he was a pretty serious guy, but he treated those kids on that show with great respect, and, I understand he was a great respectful man. I only met him. I didn't know him or anything else like that, but he sat through a couple of sets, and, I was emceeing that night, and, I remember, I think Billy Crystal came down from the comic strip, or not the comic strip, but the Mitzi's place up the street, and the comedy store. And eh, Billy came in, and Bud called me over and said, "Put Billy on. He wants to do a set." Yeah, okay. Well, I did a set him, and there was like four comics supposed to be on after that. Well, as soon as Billy was done, everybody left because the room was, whatever. But Robert sat there and he laughed. He enjoyed himself a great deal. He said goodnight to Bud. He was a gentleman, paid his bill, and he left. And but but what was Florence like, as far as, there are rumors that she dated the one guy on her show, the oldest son. I don't know if those are true or not. I don't.
I think that lasted like that night. Just they went out. They escorted each other out. He thought it was more of a date, but no, it was not a date.
How
Yeah.
could you
Yeah.
possibly date someone who plays your mom on TV, even if she isn't? I mean, the age difference has gotta be, not great, but it's gotta be enough, and what
You
would
know,
Florence Henderson have to do with him? She's a very intelligent and intelligent woman. I mean,
and she had
we've
kids
got
almost his age. Yeah, she had kids
really,
almost his age. Yeah.
we've got about 5 minutes left in the program, and I wanted to get to Carol Burnett real quick. You escorted Carol also to a lot of events.
Correct. And I first met Carol, thanks to Lucy, in 1975. Carol Burnett was being honored at the Variety Club International.
Mhm.
And on the dais that day, and that's the first time I ever met her, was Lucille Ball, Mary Tyler Moore, Shirley MacLaine, Vicki Lawrence, Tim Conway, Harvey Korman, Bernadette Peters, Roddy McDowell, and the list went on. It included a lunch, and it was $8. And I went, saw Lucy, who I didn't really know that well yet. She knew my face, but she introduced me to Carol Burnett. And I saw Carol Burnett one other time within maybe 6 months. And again, she gave me her phone number to the office and she got me tickets to see the Carol Burnett show. I sat in the
Mhm.
front row And 40 years later, at the 50th anniversary of the Carol Burnett show, I was then a guest. And she calls on me, even though I had dinner with her the night before. And I said, I'm trying to think what happened 40 years ago that nobody ever asked you on the Carol Burnett show. And I thought about it. I said, could I get a selfie with you? And of course, no one did selfies 40 years ago. So I went up on stage again, and it's a cute little 30-second video that I have of me with Carol Burnett on stage. And but I would escort her at the Golden Globes and the SAG Awards uh,
Right.
and at other events. And one of the last events I did, I escorted her on stage. And I said, this is where we first met 45 years ago on this stage. And she
Hmm.
goes, she says she remembered, but probably not.
Yeah, probably didn't.
Again, here I am with giants of show business. And it's all because of Lucy. I mean, Lucy's the one who really got me
Yeah,
to know Betty White and, all these people
yeah, yeah.
and my charm.
One couple of well, yes. How could we forget that? Uh,
And I was,
Michael
but
Stern my
people say, "Oh, you're a stalker." I go, I was 10 years old. I was 12 years old. I wasn't a stalk. I didn't know what that meant. They didn't even have
yeah.
that word in those days. But no,
Well,
I was just a real
if they say it
person.
to you, if you say, that if they say that to you, just say, "Well, I was interning," you know? I was interning. Michael Stern has been our guest here. I got a couple of more questions for him. Please go and get this book about Lucille Ball at, thelucyfan.com. Please do. Okay, you had a very funny incident where you had a picture taken with Barbara Streisand. Take it away.
Barbara Streisand, the toughest lady in Hollywood. Um, I knew I've always known that she doesn't do pictures or selfies or anything like that. But again, I was working a charity event. There was no studio audience or anything like that. It was just,
Mhm,
you had to be like invited to work it. And um, I was assigned, like, believe it or not, Cher
mhm,
and Barbara Streisand. And afterwards, they knew I could collect some photos and everything. And I stuck with Barbara Streisand's manager, who at the time was 88 years old. Um, he's still alive. He's 90 something now. And I knew I could outrun him. But um, I'm talking now as Marty, Barbara Streisand, her secretary, and myself. And we were talking about Lucy, that Lucille Ball interviewed Barbara Streisand for her radio show in the 60s. I think Barbara Streisand was like 22 years old at the time. It was called Let's Talk to Lucy, and you can now hear it on YouTube. And this was before it came out on YouTube. I said, I have a copy of it if you need it. And she goes, my gosh, I think I have a copy of it. But we were talking, and then Marty left, and I go, okay, Michael, this is your time to ask. So I asked for a photo, and she turned me down flat. She said, oh, I don't do photos. I don't do that. I said, oh, I respect you, no problems, no problem. About 3 minutes later, she said to her secretary, for the secretary to take out her phone, that Michael deserves a photo. The secretary's mouth dropped, and the secretary took about 7 or 8 photos. And then Barbara Streisand looked at all the photos and said, okay, send him that one. I wouldn't let her secretary get into the car until she emailed me that photo because I thought I would never see it. And I have it. And even my friends that night when I sent it to them said, you are now the king of pictures. Because if you go online, you never see Barbara Streisand with fans. She just doesn't do that. And
yeah,
maybe because of the lighting or she looks old or whatever, but she was nice.
mhm,
First she was tough, but then once I got into her little circle, she was really nice.
yeah. One last thing, because we only have about 2 minutes. Um, you were a mascot on Chico and the Man.
You remember that show?
God, yeah, because, if you were see the early pictures of me back when I was in high school, I had a mustache, and even in high school, I looked like Freddie Prinze.
Wow, okay. Well, I went to a filming because I used to go to NBC Studios a lot, just to go to, like, The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson or Hollywood Squares with Peter Marshall and Paul Lynde, and one Friday night, somebody had an extra ticket to see Chico and the Man, and I called my parents, I said, "Do you mind if I'm a couple hours late? I have a ticket for Chico and the Man." It was the first show of the 3rd season, and I
Mhm.
remember I was wearing a T-shirt of Canada where I was born. And the warm up that night was James Comack, who was the creator of the show. He also created Welcome Back, Kotter, Courtship of Eddie's Father for TV. He played Uncle Norman in that series, actually. And I raised my hand, I asked questions, and we were funny back and forth. And his secretary said afterwards, "Would you mind coming back next Friday? We do 2 shows, 4:30 and 7. We'll get you tickets. You could have dinner with the cast afterwards." And so I sort of became a plant. And I got to ask some of these same questions over and over again. And between the 2 shows, I would then go to the Tonight Show backstage and collect autographs. And I remember meeting Bill Cosby and Shelley Winters and David Brenner and all these celebrities and collect autographs. And but it was Chico and the Man. They called me the Chico and the Man mascot. And for a year and a half, I was friendly with Freddie Prinze, who got me tickets to see him in Las Vegas with Shirley MacLaine at Caesar's Palace,
Mhm.
which I could
Yeah.
not get into because I was not old enough.
Ah.
I had tickets, but they would not let me through that door.
Well, Michael,
So
I
I
want to
didn't get
thank you very, very much for taking the time out of your day to join us here on Main Street. And please get this book. I had a ball. My friendship with Lucille Ball at at thelucyfan.com. There's a copy of the book.
right.
And I just want to thank all of you out there. Michael, stay right where you are. Thank you all out there for watching the program. And until we meet again, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and please stay out of the heat. Until then, take care.